And we're live now too. So both of us are live. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, July 30th, and we altered our weekly webinar this week to be on Thursday instead of Wednesday. So we will be getting back to our routine. And next week we have Pathways High School, so you know about that. Today, our main speaker and main topic is Alderman Murphy and the budget. So that's very timely, and there's obviously a lot that we can learn about from this event. I'm going to switch us to a screen share, and we have a little PowerPoint, and let's get us there. And I will go move that down, present. So here we are. Okay, so again, welcome. Upcoming things here in the near west side and COVID-related resources. Near West Side Partners is working with a number of wonderful organizations to host a movie night in a week at the Harley-Davidson parking lot. So this is the major announcement going out about that. Please look for it on Facebook, and it will be posted out on the listserv shortly. It's been a crazy morning, so I'm still a bit behind. Regarding other activities, we did take a week off on Maiden near West Side this week, but do look for next week. Long term, we're going to be doing some hosting with Lisa Kay and the Farmers Market on preparing healthful, nutritious foods. Quite exciting. If you're looking for some activities to do, Milwaukee Rec has a lot of free programming. And then, of course, we have our CNI grant and Choice Neighborhood HUD grant, and that is moving along nicely, which does lead us to the next slide. Here are some pictures. Just this morning, those little pylons went in around the painting they did on 27th Street. This is actually 27th and Wells. So they added those pylons to where the painting is to help slow traffic and have people go around and make the curbside bigger, which is really cool. And then the pretty planter you see in the middle is actually a new planter placed on Bleat Street to help slow traffic. So there is a lot of stuff starting to happen related to the commercial corridors, the streetscaping, and safety. So do get it, when you get a chance to get out there, take a look at it and see what it's going to do to improve our neighborhoods. So we're happy about that. And then today we do have Alderman Murphy, and he's going to touch upon the budget with us. And he is our District 10 Alderman. He's served quite a long time. Alderman Murphy, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll just head straight into your slideshow. Sound good?
Sounds good, Barb.
Okay, so tell us about your, actually, how long you've been serving and a bit of your career.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you to the Near West Side Partners for organizing this Zoom meeting. I very much appreciate it. We're really, as a Common Council, trying to embark during this COVID-19 epidemic, using technology to get greater involvement of the community in the budgetary process. Obviously, there's a lot of attention on the key issues involving how expenditures of city dollars are spent, and this is a great opportunity to expand the opportunity outside of having a one-on-one or public meetings. So thank you very much for doing it. I represent the 10th Aldermanic District, which is the west side stretching from Highway 100 where the zoo is located to 35th in Wisconsin, bordered by the I-94 corridor, going all the way to 76 in Capitol. So I have a very diverse district, both economically, racially. I'm a lifelong West Side resident. My parents were immigrants to the United States in 1960. They moved to 24th in Kilbourne and then over to 56 in Meineke. Grew up mainly in those neighborhoods. And I'm one of 5 children they had. I was the first born in the United States. Attended school in the general area. Over at my brothers attended St. Rose. I went to St. Catherine's and Highmount Elementary School, and then graduated from Milwaukee Madison High School and UW Milwaukee with a degree in geological sciences. Went on to pursue a master's degree in public administration, but got interrupted by running for office in 1989. So I'm currently now serving my coming up on my 32nd year as a member of the Milwaukee Common Council. And very appreciative to the voters who were gracious enough to elect me back in April. So this afternoon, I should say, as you hear the church bells, it's my opportunity and pleasure as chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee to kind of walk citizens through what the budgetary process is. City of Milwaukee's budget is approximately $1.5 billion. To give you a perspective, that's, if you were equating to a private company, we would be one of the largest private companies here in the city of Milwaukee. We employ nearly 7,000 plus individuals in the city of Milwaukee. And our budgetary process, as I walk you through this, will kind of show you where our revenue stream is, what our expenditures are, and what it looks like going into the 2021 year budget. I will begin that we have a mayor-council form of government. Like many Midwestern cities, that's how the government is orchestrated and organized. In other cities, there are some differences. Some cities have a general city manager, but we have a mayor-council form of government in which the mayor has the power as a chief executive. His responsibilities are for putting the budget together. Milwaukee Common Council then has the ability to make changes to that budget and make reflections of those changes through the legislative process, through budget amendments. Those budget amendments are voted upon by committee members, then by the full Common Council. The mayor then has the opportunity to review those amendments. He can either veto them, sustain them, or let them just go through. The mayor, as indicated, is the responsible executive who has to put the budget together, and the Common Council then makes the subsequent changes. So if we go to the next slide. So this is how the 2021 budget will work. In mid-March, the budget request materials are distributed to all city departments. What I mean by that, the mayor sends out a letter to all the budget chair heads, his cabinet positions, and you request from them and all the information as relates to the 2021 budget. So to give you a perspective, most people, we work on an annual budget. The state of Wisconsin does a biannual budget. But we begin pretty early in the year working on determining what the expenditures would be for the following year as early as mid-March. The draft is done in June to September, where the department give priorities to the mayor, and also the mayor also seeks public hearing on that in the 2021 budget. But this year is going to be a little different as a result of COVID-19. And we have embarked on a much greater use of technology to seek people and the citizens' input into the project process. So this is a good example of how we're going to do it. And at the end of this presentation, it'll show you how you can get your voices heard. And we're going to create a new technology this year where you can help decide what the priority should be by you playing budget director and helping yourself in determining and giving a better explanation how the budget will work out. And that is something that we're really excited about releasing in the very near future. So in late September, the mayor presents the 21 budget to the Common Council. He introduces it as a legislative file. And in the month of October, the Finance and Personnel Committee has hearing on the 2020 budget. In early October, we usually have a joint public hearing with the community. On October 30th, the budget amendments are offered. Usually it's a 2-day process. And then on November 6th, that will be the final budget adoption. But as I indicated, as the mayor puts his budget together, it'll be released to the community. The community will have an opportunity to view it online. Certainly will be able to make comments on the budget, communicate with their elected officials of their priorities and what they like to see. I think clearly one of the biggest issues is the Milwaukee Police Department, and we'll go into that in a little more detail, but obviously with George Floyd's death and the large and discussion around the United States about priorities in terms of, I'm sure many of your listeners know about many requests that have come into council members regarding defunding the Milwaukee Police Department and reallocating additional resources from their budget to other budgetary locations. It will be a hot topic item for both the mayor and of course Common Council members. Next slide, please. So we're going to begin, where does the money come from to allow us to have a $1.5 million budget? So property taxes, probably most people would be surprised of the $1.5 million budget, only comprise about $291 million of that. So property taxes that we collect only, in fact, if you give you a proper perspective, the budget for the Milwaukee Police Department is over $300 million just alone. So just the property taxes alone wouldn't even cover the operation costs of the Milwaukee Police Department. But property taxes are levied on, assessed value, and everyone did get their assessments recently. A lot of them are not too happy about them, but that's how we determine the value of your home, and then that's the basis where we come up with tax rate. In Milwaukee, on your tax bill only represents one of 5 taxing authorities, but that's how we generate the property taxes to go towards helping assist in the operation of the government. As you can see, and I'm not going to read everything of these items, but I would encourage people to look at the details on them. So 290 million comes from property taxes. Intergovernmental revenue is about 273 million. This includes money that we receive from the state government, and that's called state shared revenue, which is about 219 million of that $273 million. To give you a perspective, though, that money has been frozen in many respects for many, many years. And as a result, even if you looked at the last 10 to 15 years, if it had a rate of inflation increase, we would have received over $100 million more money. But the state of Wisconsin has really held not just the city of Milwaukee, but many cities throughout the state of Wisconsin and really shorted them. They have not seemed to do that with their own budgets. They've given themselves certainly a substantial increase in some respects above the rate of inflation. But for cities like Milwaukee, they've held them fairly flat, and as a result, we've been squeezed very hard as the public policy forum came out. Milwaukee is between a rock and a hard place in many respects because of the lack of revenue coming from the state of Wisconsin. So our general fund user charges, and this is what you get on your tax bill when you see the additional items like sewer maintenance and your water bill charges, generates about $134.8 million. And over the last 15 years, we've really relied upon those additional charges as a response to the cutbacks in state aids. So that solid waste user charge helps go toward operating our city budget. Enterprise fund user charges is about 205 million. That includes the operating rate revenues you pay towards your water department when you get your water bill and your sewer maintenance charges. Those help towards offsetting those costs in those areas. So that gives you a brief rundown from the major sources of total budget revenue coming from the city for the city of Milwaukee. So intergovernment aid is 36%, charges for services are 20%, license of permits 2%, fringe benefits 3.2%, and property taxes only representing 28.6%. So it gives you in the pie chart a pretty good understanding where the money comes from. As we proceed to the next chart, expenditures. What do you spend all that money on, Alderman? So the money goes to the following, and this is the top topic for 2021's budget. Police department comprises 45.4% of the budget. So the police department's budget is approximately will be $297 million. That's a little bit less from last year. And obviously we cut the police department's budget last year by 60 police officers. This year, the mayor is proposing a further cut, but I assume he'll be making additional changes before the end of the year. But right now it's projected to be 297 million. Now, 95% of that budget, it goes to the personnel expenses. The Milwaukee Police Department is pretty much salaries. The 5% towards equipment purchase and other equipment, but the majority of money goes really toward paying their salaries. An average police officer, after he finishes his training with the police academy and starts in the Milwaukee Police Department, salary is about $60,000 starting. It's a pretty good, piece of change. And that doesn't include fringe benefits. So that's why police officers are very expensive. And that's why our budget is so high as it relates to police services. Neighborhood services, Department of Neighborhood Services. Our building inspectors is only 2.9%. Fire department, the other large segment of our budget, is 17.4%. That reflects about $114 million in their budget. The next largest item really is Department of Public Works. So that's our garbage trucks, people fixing your roads, fixing your electrical systems. That's about 18% of the budget. That relates to dollar figures of 121 million. The library is 3.6, and that would relate to real money of 23.6 million. The health department is 2.2, and that's about 14.7 million. Now, the health department has received a lot of money in the last several months. That's not reflective of their total budget from the CARES Act. So we do anticipate that budget going up significantly in terms of their allocation, but a lot of that money will be coming from the federal government in those areas. So that's how we spend your money for the most part. I haven't talked about city debt, but we borrow money. And we have to pay that money back. We're not like the federal government. So in that case, 268 million is allocated toward our costs for borrowing money. And we borrow money for generally long-term purposes like infrastructure. When we repair your streets or reconstruct your streets, we borrow money for that purposes. And that debt has to be packed. And unfortunately, we've increased our city debt. We tried to hold it to a certain line, but a significant portion goes toward paying off the bonds that we borrow money for. And so that includes also money from the tax incremental districts, and it includes money for, as I indicated, streets, sewers, and water department projects. So big picture, public works, public safety, city debt, neighborhood development, in the chart kind of breaks out into dollar figures. And it's important to point out, when you look at public safety, it comes to approximately about $406 million. So it really eats up a great portion of our budget. It's just simple public safety, police and fire services. And as you know, they have been the only two departments that Governor Walker gave the ability to negotiate their salaries and collective bargaining. He got rid of collective bargaining for all the other unions, including teachers, but all the other AFSCME and public employees. He gave them a gift of two things. They allowed them to continue to negotiate benefits, which we have been, significantly impacted by that. And he also gave them a gift of eliminating residency, which has had a detrimental impact in the city. Currently, right now, 50% of our police and firefighters no longer live in our city, which has, I think, a detrimental impact on our city. So personnel costs, as I indicated, that's the largest significant cost of our government for operation. In the chart below you shows that 80% of the general city purpose budget funds personnel cost. And so there are approximately 7,183 full-time equivalents in the city budget. And to give you a perspective, we have cut personnel. When I first started in government, we had over 10,000 employees in the city of Milwaukee. So we've cut the city personnel by 30%. That's a pretty significant cut. Population has stayed pretty much even. Obviously, we tried to be more efficient in using technology and reducing services, but it'll give you a perspective how we used to have a lot more people working in city government, 30% more, not too long ago. But just because budgetary restrictions on the city, we've had to cut back a number of personnel, and that'll be a major challenge going into 2021 budget. So that kind of breaks out that pie chart there in terms of where the public safety, public works, general government, neighborhood and development, culture and recreation, and health. So as I understand it, I think I wanted to keep this within 15 minutes of just giving you a brief background on what the budgetary process in the city of Milwaukee is, what the revenue and expenditures is, and how the priorities are set. Now, how to make your voice heard. There's a budget priority survey. It's at the end of this pie chart. If you want to go to the next, just down one more. That's personnel. If you want to go down one more from there. And that's it. So you can click here to take a survey now. So I would encourage people to do that. We really want your information and want your involvement in helping us to assist in making priorities for 2021. Certainly, I've received a lot of emails as it relates to the issue of defunding police, both for and against. And we want that dialogue to come in from the community. And this is one additional other location where you can do that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions citizens may have, or the near West Side Partners, Barb, if you have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Murphy. I love these presentations because I always learn something new. So my little civic lesson is complete for the day, so I appreciate it. If folks do have questions, please pop them in our chat room, and we have one team member dedicated towards bringing those questions up. And then Brittany actually will be the person repeating those questions. So Brittany, do we have anybody online with a question?
So far, I am, hold on, give me a second.
Yeah, I just don't generate a lot of viewership, I guess.
Oh no, it is.
Number of people.
Okay, we got some questions, hold on.
You're not getting away, Alderman Murphy. So the time, did I want to ask? How long will the survey be up?
Till the day the budget is adopted.
Okay. And
that's what I understand.
okay. And that's being done through the
I having a problem. So one of the questions was, has our budget increased over the years?
Well, yeah, our budget certainly has increased over the years. Obviously, you know, people get more in salaries and benefits, and our healthcare costs go up. So the budget certainly has increased over the years.
Next question is, how many exempt properties have affected the budget over the years, and how many have exempt properties grown percentage points over the years?
Yeah, good, very good question. So City of Milwaukee is at a somewhat competitive disadvantage. Like most metropolitan cities across the United States, we're older cities, and we had a large number of the institutions like hospitals, other churches, large churches, institutional other players that are exempt from paying property taxes. So the city of Milwaukee's landmass, about 30% is probably exempt from paying property taxes. Now, over the years, the state legislature has granted more and more waivers from people paying property taxes. This has mainly been under the Republican leadership, although there certainly has been some Democratic members who have voted for them. As a result, that has put a greater burden on residential property owners, but that's been a growing problem. So for example, the Wisconsin Manufacturer Association, probably the most powerful lobbyist group in the state of Wisconsin, has very quietly and very deliberately and strategically shifted the cost from their share of the burden of paying taxes in the state to residential property owners. And that's not an issue just for Milwaukee, that's been an issue for other people throughout our state. And that's why in some respects have seen some increases in property taxes as a result of increasing that cost to residential property owners. They're not the only ones. There's been other groups out there been pushing for more property to be taken off the tax rolls. Most recently, Marquette University was able to get through a budget item that exempted a significant amount of their property that they had acquired off the property tax base. So long time is, you know, large cities like Milwaukee, which have all the universities and the hospitals, cemeteries, are all off the property tax base, versus our suburban powders, which are newer communities who didn't have those institutional properties. So they have less of their property off the tax base than the city of Milwaukee. But it's an important difference to point out, because the city ends up inheriting a lot of the problems of poverty, and yet we have some of the largest private institutions in our community that are not paying their fair share in taxes. And we've tried to get people to pay a pilot payment in lieu of taxes, and we've had very limited success in doing that, versus, for example, cities like Boston, who have been able to get pilots, and a lot of these institutions have not been willing to do that. Any other questions?
Yes. So our next question is, well, one was, how will this recording be available? So I can answer that one. You don't have to worry about that, Murphy. So if you are looking to share this, it is up on our Facebook, because we are Facebook Live right now. So it will be available there shortly after the webinar has ended, and you will be able to share it. Back to questions for Alderman Murphy, though. What priorities do you see for investment in neighborhoods?
So one of the issues that we're looking at is obviously trying to get additional federal aid to help neighborhoods directly. But what I mean by that, we go through the federal government in terms of community development, block grant funding to assist, for example, in providing storefront facade grants, small business loans, sometimes outright grants. But in this COVID-19, we've asked for state assistance and federal assistance to be given directly to businesses, for example, on their personnel and paying salaries. So we lobbied very extensively in the past to have some of the CARE dollars to assist local business people. I'm just now talking about commercial development. But the city is also trying to look at potentially using other resources. I've asked our Legislative Reference Bureau to look at how we can use TIF dollars, tax incremental financing dollars, to potentially assist in home ownership. And we're exploring that both at a local level and a national level. But TIF dollars have to have an increase. So when a TIF boundary is created, the premise is always based on the fact that you have to have an enhanced development in the area that generates those additional dollars to offset that investment that you may put for present day use of that money. If you don't have that increment, the TIF fails, and then you have to go to another TIF area that make up the cost. So it has to be done smart and strategically, but we're going to be examining that about the potential of using those dollars. It's not a simple answer, but we are exploring how that could be providing additional revenue stream to assist homeowners, and how that would be spent, but obviously guidelines would have to be determined and who would be able to get access to those funds. But we continue looking at trying how we invest more money in public health. For example, I've tried to raise private money to renovate playgrounds in our city. So I've been successful in raising over $3.1 million in additional resources to the city of Milwaukee to leverage the money that we have allocated to renovate playgrounds. So at the end of this year, we'll have probably finished nearly 17 playgrounds in 3 years to renovate them. A good one would be the Marcus DeBeck Playground as an example. Recently, I received another substantial grant, so we'll be doing a major project in Alderman Rainey's district. In addition, you know, I personally have gone out and raised additional money as it relates to the opiate cocaine epidemic and heroin epidemic. So we just recently, through the good efforts of Courtney Geiger and Michael Wright, Courtney's in the health department, Michael's in the fire department, we received an additional $500,000 grant plus the $750,000 grant we received earlier to provide additional resources to the fire and the health department to fight the opiate epidemic. But those are some of the things that I'm trying to do, because quite honestly, we can't just simply tax people, and we have to work towards finding additional resources to help neighborhoods. And it's in some cases I'm personally, you know, writing grants. So that's one of the things we have to do to try and find additional resources to reinvest in our neighborhoods, because, you know, it's important to have a healthy downtown, but if you do not have a healthy neighborhood like the Near West Side Partners in your neighborhoods, the city will fail, and we have to reinvest in our neighborhoods. That's a critical component which I continually fight for.
Thank you.
Okay, so we just have 3 more questions. So the next question is, could you talk about your views on the sales tax as the stadium tax has a sunset?
Yeah, the stadium tax is really is gone. It's done its job. The 0.01% was, you know, people have been paying on their sales taxes for many years is finished now, and that tax ended with the complete payment of the bonds for the Miller Park. So the mayor and other individuals have pitched an idea to the state legislature for enhanced sales tax that would be allocated to both the city and the county for resources. This was all prior to COVID-19. So I've asked our intergovernmental relations where that's at, you know, in terms of the potential for the state legislature to increase the sales tax. And what that really does, it really just grants the local community the ability to put this on a referendum. So all we're asking in the past is just to ask the state legislature for the permission to put it on a referendum, a binding referendum for citizens to vote upon if they would support an increase in their sales tax, a small increase to be used, for example, for potential health department, for the potential for the police department, or for just paying down debt. But, you know, I'm not optimistic right now. Obviously, we're really we're in an economic recession, and sales tax can, you know, asking citizens right now for them to pay more. I'm not so sure even if we got permission, which would be great. We should get the permission, at least put it on the ballot. I'm not confident right now citizens would be overwhelmingly supportive of that increase. So at this point in time, I'm not real optimistic that the state legislature is going to give us even the authority to allow that to occur. But we continue to lobby, at least to have the authority to allow for the citizens of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County to have a say if they wish to do that. We'll see what happens, but I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon.
So our next question is, how much does the city pay for state mandates?
Can you repeat that? My hearing's not so good.
How much does the city pay for state mandates?
That's a pretty open question. Like when people say state mandates, I think what they're saying is, the state of Wisconsin has governing authority in terms of the ability, even of a city of a first class like Milwaukee, and dictating certain things we have to do. Whether, for example, that's part of our health department code or limits our ability, for example, in having a potential state sales tax, a local sales tax. They control a lot of what we can and cannot do. For example, on residency, we had residency in place for over 50 years longer, and it was a matter of a contract negotiations. And the police and firefighter union and the general ASPE union, but mainly the police and fire, would have given up millions upon millions of dollars in benefits and salary increases if the city had agreed to remove residency. But in a swipe of a pen by Scott Walker, he basically gave them millions and millions of dollars in allowing them to state legislature to wipe away, which was really a contract negotiation between the city and Milwaukee and its unions. And he wiped that away. So that state mandate cost the city of Milwaukee not only millions of dollars in revenue we could have received from less payment on salaries and wages to the public safety, but has resulted in having a detrimental impact on the fact that we now have only 50% of firefighters and police officers living in our city. So that one action of that state mandated by Governor Walker cost the city of Milwaukee millions upon millions of dollars.
All right, so our next question is, has the city had an issue with its bonding rate?
Yes, so when I first started with City of Milwaukee, we were a AAA bonded city. What that means, the Standard & Poor's and Moody's Index rate the value of how fast and how regularly you pay back the money that you borrow. Why that is important is that when banks look at that, and private individuals or institutional partners, when they buy the bonds for the city of Milwaukee, and this is when the city of Milwaukee goes out and borrows money, we put them out in either notes or bonds, and private investors or large institutional partners will buy those bonds, understanding that they will get on a regular payment back their principal and interest. Sometimes it's over a note, which is a short-term investment, or a long-term investment of a bond. Bonds are 30 years, notes are usually 15 years or less. And you pay an interest rate on that. So let's say you go out and buy a bond, like a savings bond, you're promised by the city of Milwaukee, I'll pay you 3%. And the bond rating agency said Milwaukee historically has always paid its debts on time and it's always made its promises good. But because the city of Milwaukee, in many respects, no fault of its own, has a larger percentage of the poverty in the state of Wisconsin concentrated here in many respects by purposeful zoning restrictions and prohibiting multifamily housing out in our suburban communities. They concentrated the poor in the city. The city has become more poor. And as a result, our ability, based on the rating agencies, to pay back our bonds on a regular payment and making sure that we do so has reduced our grading level. Now, we always made our payments, we always paid the right interest amounts, but the risk associated with the city doing so based on the poverty in the city that the bond agencies look at and a number of other financial criteria cost the city more money to borrow money. So what that means is that we have to pay more for those bonds. So if it's a AAA, I paid less interest. It's like going to the bank and you have a person who has good credit rating, he can get the lower credit on his home mortgage because the bank knows he's going to pay it back and he has the money to do so. And he has more down on principal. Somebody who has a higher risk has to pay more interest. And what that means, though, is more money from going into the operational expenses, paying for the operation of our city, has to go paying off the interest on our debt. So that's why it's really important to try and have a strong credit rating. And we have seen the credit rating reduce in the last 30 years. And as I indicated, in many reflection, it's not based on the management and the operation of the city. It's based on the increased poverty of the city. And as I point out, when you look at our suburban communities, and they've been sued by the Fair Housing Council, many of them will not allow multifamily housing, and they structurally and strategically and sometimes intentionally try to restrict not only people of different economic means, but people of color from moving in their communities. And that has resulted in Milwaukee having that issue. And it's a complex issue. I try to summarize as best I could.
No, that was awesome. Okay, so Alderman Murphy, we are at 12:36, but we have 2 other questions. So would you like to take them?
Couldn't hear the last part. Sorry, can you repeat that?
Brittany?
So we have
It's in the meeting. Okay.
Yep. So we're already at time, but we have 2 other questions because you were worried that you weren't going to get enough questions, and now you have a lot. So it's up to you on whether or not you want to take these, or if we want to wait and get back to people about these.
I want to be very transparent about our budget. So why don't you give me at least 2 more questions?
Okay, perfect. So the next question is, how much do we have in a rainy day fund? Can we project a budget deficiency at this time for 2021? Do we know if there is going to, or do we know what the revenue limit for the city is at this time for the next budget?
Yeah, for the most part, we have projections that we look at, and we're pretty good at projecting them. We're not 100% accurate, but we're fairly good. So we do have a rainy day fund. It's called the Tax Stabilization Fund and the Debt Amortization Fund. So the Tax Stabilization Fund is more or less our rainy day account. Unfortunately, we've been drawing down on that account more and more because we're having fewer revenue dollars coming in from the state of Wisconsin. So that rainy day account has been drawn down further every year over the last 5 years. But we're pretty good. This is why our credit rating, even though we're one of the poorest cities in the United States of America, we still have a pretty good credit rating compared to other cities, is because we have things like rainy day accounts and we do pay our bills on time. So the Tax Stabilization Fund is looked at by the bond rating agencies, and they say that's a really positive thing. And so we have that there. We also created in fact, I sponsored the legislation, a rainy day account for our pension fund. We've drawn down on that quite significantly, but as I pointed out earlier, one of the big costs for the city of Milwaukee is our pension. Currently, the city of Milwaukee contributes approximately $83 million a year just for people's pensions. And we have that projected going up to another $87 million increase annually by 2023. So we created a pension reserve account, but that is a huge problem that we'll be facing as a city by 2023. And of course, it's also predicated on the stock market and the rate of returns that we receive there. So that's something that I'm constantly worrying about every day, to be honest. But we do recognize right now, from basically February to fairly recently, up to June, probably June 1st, we were losing $5 million $5 a million a month in lost revenue. So if the federal government does not come up with a package that assists cities and states in the next stimulus package, the cities and states across the United States, just not Milwaukee, are going to have a significant problem in their budgets for 2021. And that will be the responsibility of the mayor to communicate that to the public before, as he releases his budget. So that's something you'll see in the newspapers and on TV in the not too distant future, because if the Senate and the House can't reach a settlement on that issue, in addition to people losing $600 a week in their unemployment, this will have a material impact on our budget for 2021. And I'll be very frank, it's what keeps me up at night between that and the pension. Next question.
All right. So first I'm going to give you a comment. So one comment was that one of our watchers or viewers wanted to thank you for the playground at 29th and Clybourne and Park. So then our last question is, has MPD's budget increased over the years? If so, why?
Certainly. So the Milwaukee Police Department budget has increased pretty much every year, with the exception of last year. It went down because we eliminated 60 police officer positions. And obviously, even without seeing what the mayor's proposing, what he's got for 2021, it'll go down, based just on, let's separate the whole concept of defunding the police. They'll be going down because we just won't have enough money to pay for everything. But the issue is, why does the police department go up? Once again, they have the ability to negotiate their benefits, not like AFSCME or the other unions. And so when they go to a collective bargaining and we can't reach a settlement, they go to an arbitrator, and an arbitrator will then issue an award. In this case of the police department, they get pretty substantial increases in their pay and their benefits, and that drives our cost. So as I indicated, 95% of the Milwaukee Police Department is personnel, and every year they've been able to negotiate an enhanced benefit to their pay. Now, let's be clear, being a police officer is a very difficult job. It's challenging, obviously, in this climate, and nobody begrudges anybody from a fair payment of their salary for work received. But one has to keep in mind, what can the city afford when we have such a high level of poverty and we have restricted revenue streams coming in? Very little ability for the city of Milwaukee to increase its revenue. That's why the mayor has lobbied for an increase in the sales tax. So police department budget's gone up just simply because of the cost of their salary increases and benefit increases over the years, with the exception of last year where it went down. So that's why it will be a continuing challenge going forward for the city, notwithstanding any other extra cuts, just an ability to fund the police department. It is eating up more and more of our operational budget, and nobody wants to live in a city where you have, no libraries, a diminished health department, a diminished Department of Public Works. So that is a huge issue facing not just Milwaukee, but all metropolitan large cities across the country, is this major challenge. Well, once again, thanks very much. I really appreciate the questions. I want to say thank you again to the Near West Side partners for helping organizing this. I think it's a great opportunity to get our information out on the budget process, and I hope people take a chance to look at the survey, and the new technology being provided will help them walk them through the budget process. And then if they have follow-up questions, they certainly should contact their local alderperson to assist them in answering those questions, or our budget director. So thanks for very much having me on your program.
Thank you for joining us, Alderman Murphy. We really appreciate it. So everyone should have the link. We put it into the Zoom comment for people to comment on the budget. It is also up on Facebook Live. In case you are looking to gain access for it there. If you have any questions, like Alderman Murphy said, please feel free to reach out to your local alderperson.
Thanks for jumping in there, Brittany. I was on mute, which isn't unusual. So agreed with everything there. We answered all those questions. Wanted to share this beautiful piece of artwork chalked by some friends of ours at Saturday's event down at Historic Milwaukee. Pretty excited, or neat piece of art that you can do with chalk and the talent that we have in our community. Also, you can find all this information, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This will be posted YouTube and Facebook. And again, many, many thanks to Alderman Murphy for being part of our webinar, and let us know if you have any additional questions. And then we will see you again next week. Thanks much. Have a great day.